Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Corner podcast, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm your host, Harry Potvin, and today I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Darren Portelli. Darren is the founder and CEO of Crazy D Labs, which is a beverage innovation company that is offering health-conscious sparkling sodas that are packed with prebiotic fibers and promote gut health. Darren was such a blast to have on, and these drinks are actually really good. I'm not a big soda fan, but when I got these, they tasted delicious. So if you're actually interested in a healthy soda, it sounds kind of weird, but a healthy soda that really promotes good health, these are the ones for you. And of course, no matter where you are in the world, if you are listening, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars if you're on that podcast platform. Share with someone who might want to hear this episode. It's a really great one, and I can't wait for you to listen. I'll talk to you all very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Peace. All right, I think we're good to go. What better way to start the episode? Darren, thank you so much for joining me today on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and cheers.
Cheers. So, where does your story with I guess I want to start with the creation of these sodas. Like, where does that whole creation start? Where'd you get the inspiration for it?
I was being extremely diligent, and just doing whatever I could in terms of like just eliminating added sugars and just eating super, super clean. But I started craving ginger for the first time in my life, which was really weird. And I was having ginger tea, and but it was summertime, and ginger tea was just like, it didn't feel refreshing, and I just wanted something like some kind of like indulgence on a Saturday night watching a movie, just to kind of treat myself. And what happened was I grabbed I hate saying brand names, but I don't think this is overly terrible to say. But I grabbed a small bottle of this ginger drink, which was one of the healthier ones, called Fever Tree, a little small like 200 milliliter bottle. I just remember being so dweeby, and because I just eliminated everything, and I'm texting my wife going, "Oh, I found this stuff," and and I'm gonna like so I start watching a movie. I pour this over ice, and this is like about half. Because a normal can of something is 355 mil, and so Fever Tree's 200 mil, and I have about half of that. Put it over ice. And I'm sipping it extremely slowly. And I do a few sips in, boom, I get the same migraine that I used to get when I was a kid. It was just the weirdest thing. Like, it wasn't a headache. This was a migraine. I'd had many headaches over the years, but it had been at least like 20 years since I'd had a migraine. And it was like, oh my God, like so many things made sense, because I was like, we thought that these migraines had to do with allergies, but when I was a kid in the summer, like we would come in the house and we would drink like Kool-Aid or juice, and you'd chug juice, and then I'd go back outside, and then I would get the migraine, and we would think that it was from that. And then I was like, whoa, wait a second. Like, these migraines were really like this self-defense mechanism telling me that, like, these refined sugars, like unnatural sugars, just didn't make any sense at all in the body. Like, and when it comes down to it, it's just like this rapid inflammation that's happening, from this unnatural glycemic response. We weren't designed to be having any liquid at all that was, like sugary and stripped of fibers. We designed to be eating fruits and vegetables. This kind of came through like human invention and juicing and all these kind of things, right? And so I was like, wow, like, why can't I make a ginger soda with real ginger juice that'll actually help people and not hurt them? And that's what happened. That's how it started. And of course, like from there, like, was not an easy process at all, but that's how it started. I'm like, ginger juice is healing. It's supposed to be anti-inflammatory, help with digestion, do all these other things. Like, I gotta do this. So that's how it started.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
with the migraines, like when did you start noticing them as a kid? Did they come early on, and when did you finally realize that like they're not normal headaches anymore?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Like, I can't say that I had that many migraines when I was a kid, you know? And I think that they were happening more towards like, me like being like, 10 to 13 years old, and then they stopped. Right. And so my theory behind that is just like, you know what? I pounded my body so much that the defense mechanism just stopped.
Mm.
Like, I mean, that's kind of the thing. Like, your body's only going to warn you so many times, right? And it's not like I was like, this champion chugger of like, of juice or whatever through my life or whatever. But it was just like, what I have is I have something called visual snow my whole life, like just where I'm seeing contrast all the time, like static.
Right.
And this is due to it's also in some circles called like permanent migraine aura. But there's like this kind of hyper sensitivity, like hyper movement or metabolism, right? That causes some of this, right? And so I was reading about it, and it's, for me, it's kind of like, it's not epilepsy. Like, I'm not going to go into seizures, but there's some similarities, right? In terms of what's going on in the brain. And that's why, certain diets like the ketogenic can work for me when my brain is running on fats. It's just, I just feel good, but so to answer your question, like, I mean, that's it never really was a huge thing. I just thought I was getting migraines. Some people in my family, I know aunts and that, like, who would get migraines. We just thought it was this normal kind of thing, or like this kind of, oh, like he's around 13 getting some migraines, maybe he'll grow out of it, or it's just allergies. So
Mm.
that was never a thing. But with me, what was happening was, I mean, I would say around that age was like the start of like this mental health decline, of just not feeling present, on a daily basis, and just kind of like, oh, who's the daydreamer, who's not paying attention really, and just kind of fake laughing or whatever, right? And so it was this kind of like pattern, like really started then, and I mean, now we would call this like ADD, and well, now they got rid of ADD, they call it, everybody's ADHD, but I mean, I'm 45 now, so these weren't things that we would really, really focus on, and but that's what happened, and but as I got older, I started thinking about my mental health, and going like, okay, like if I can maybe figure out like what is causing this issue in terms of my vision, maybe that is going to um, help all these other facets of my own mental health. Like, maybe that is the root, whatever's causing that issue, right? And I'm not saying that that was like a correct theory, but that's what really got me into inflammation, and brain health, because I realized that this, whatever's causing this, in terms of my vision, is impacting my mental health. So that's kind of where that all came from. And yeah, yeah.
Right. Now, so you started experiencing like these headaches at around 13. You said when was the age where you started realizing your mental health was in decline?
I would say it was around the same time. I mean, it was definitely grade school.
Mm.
And it was just more of a kind of like this separation, where they say a lot of times when kids have ADD, they start to kind of separate, in terms of like their attention span. Their grades are gonna start declining a little bit, so it was definitely around then, it was, but I was smart enough that I could hang in there, but there definitely was this kind of decline, or I would have to read things like, like, I mean, many, many times over again, in order to really drill it down, but it was, yeah, so that's kind of when I started to notice that. Yeah.
Right. And then from then until when you started doing like your own self research about inflammation and how
Yep.
that correlates to your mental health, like what age were you there?
That was 30s. So that
Oh,
was
okay.
very, I mean, that was very much stereotypical. I mean, like when we look at it now, and I look at it from like a beverage entrepreneur, there starts to be like, a compounding of issues that seem to happen to people once they hit their, early 30s, but mainly mid 30s, right? These lifestyle choices that we've made start to get more drastic, right? Like you can handle it for a while, through your 20s, and like you can pound yourself to the ground and just come back, but it starts to really add up at that stage, right? And so it was really interesting. I mean, I things were definitely getting worse. I didn't know why. And I remember like just kind of like there was this kind of crossroads where I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe, maybe I'm going to, see an ND, you know. But I also was recommended to go see, um, neurologist in terms of like more of like, just practical like medicine, right? So that was happening. And so it was like, wait a second. So I started learning about this more holistic approach while I started receiving like ADD, ADHD, like medications,
Hmm.
and one of the biggest, the hugest things that I look at now, was that this moment where the first time like I met this this indeed this girl says, well, how's your digestion, you know and it was just such a weird moment for me because I'm like, she was pretty close to my age, and I've got this girl asking me how I shit, basically, you know, and I was like, this is gross, like this is gross. I don't want to hear this, like, and I'm like, I don't know, like, fine, like whatever, like we're not really going to talk about this, are we? And so we didn't talk about it at all. And it's just it's one of these things where, like, for me, like knowing everything that I know now, me being on these meds, getting off the meds, like all this whole journey, right? It's like, this is when it comes down to it, like for people on a physiological, like like biological level, right? In terms of like every day, it's like you want to monitor how that goes, right? We have other things going on in terms of mental health, but if we take care of our digestion, we're going to put ourselves on the best playing field that we actually can, and it's hilarious, it's like, just, I'm like, no, take epic dumps, you will feel good, you will, like this is really what it comes down to on its most basic level, and but I just remember that moment where I just wasn't ready to hear this. I really wasn't. And but that was that part of the journey and how that went down. And but I ended up getting on medications. And I was like, oh my God, like I felt so unbelievable. I was like, this is me. This is really, really me. And this is the brain that I always thought that I had, you know. This is, like all of those years of trying to figure out, like, oh, like vitamin B, ginkgo, and whatever, like just trying to experiment with things like through my early 20s. And, people just want to feel present, like, you want to enjoy life. Right. And so I was just always trying to find this stuff. And then I finally, I had these medications, and it was like that was something else, like just to feel the way that I did, but yeah, anyhow, I don't want to trail off here too much, but it, does that answer your last question?
No, yeah, definitely. But for me, as a follow up, like, is that why it took so long from from 13 to your 30s? Is because you just weren't ready to hear that, like what you needed to change. You weren't ready to hear what you had
Oh,
to
and,
do.
and yeah, like, I mean, no, we just didn't know, I mean,
Right.
and what, I think what you're getting at is like just this kind of like more learning how to control my mental health, right? Is that more what you're getting at, or are you
Yeah.
getting at like the oh, yeah, yeah. Well, it took even longer than that, I mean, to really understand, because and it got to this era of when I, created the drinks, right? That's when I finally started to, and when that migraine, epiphany happened, of eating so well, and exercise, and loading up with fiber, and having that experience. And then it took about 3 years, 3 years for me from that stage to create the drink. And that was just a ton of, like, research, in terms of, like, I was like, if diabetes is this problem, you know, this, because I was like, this unnatural glycemic spike, causing inflammation, right? A little inflammation is good, but when it's unnatural, that's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, maybe if I make this anti-diabetic drink, it's actually going to help, my vision, which in turn will help my mental health, right? So I was up at night researching, for about 3 years, just trying to find this way, and trying to help myself. Of course, like, this was even after I was on medications, because I was like, well, maybe I don't have to be on these forever. I can figure something out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And finally discovered, I started, like, looking into vegetables, and really looking into this forager diet, how we used to eat. And I started to notice patterns, in terms of, oh, okay, well, chicory root, right? It has something in it called inulin, which helps with insulin resistance, and I was seeing that, oh, diabetics can have chicory, and there's a light sweetness, but it actually helps their blood sugar levels, right? And now what I'm talking about right now is, like, it's becoming a little bit more common knowledge about how impactful blood sugar is on mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't know a lot of that at this stage, right? So I was like, okay, I started learning about jicama, and I started learning about, like, Jerusalem artichoke, and I started seeing, like, different types of these fibers that were inside of these vegetables. And then I found something called yacon root, and this is what launched Crazy Bees. Like, this was unbelievable. And I started putting this yacon root syrup inside the drink, and I started to feel unbelievable. It was we didn't know why, but it started this really wild experience. This, of me just feeling so happy. And I mean, of course, it was a lot of things coming together, a lot: exercise, diet, right? I was taking probiotics before. They never really did a thing for me. And I could talk about that a little bit later, just about, like, the common knowledge on probiotics right now, and how difficult they can be to get them to work in any, like, individual, what has to happen. But I was just trying to make this ginger soda that would help people, and I started putting in this yacon in. But the thing is that, like, this vegetable is one of the highest, if it's harvested and turned into syrup at the right time, it is the highest levels of FOS, fructooligosaccharides, of any vegetable there is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this FOS is also found in asparagus, right? But it has a light sweetness. Okay, it's an inulin type fiber, so it helps with insulin resistance. But I started getting in my system, and I started feeling really amazing, and people are like, "What's going on?" Like, you were a little too happy, like, or like, they didn't know what version of me to expect, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I was taking very high dose of these medications that I was on, and when you start ingesting fiber, right, you start absorbing better, right? And when your digestion's working better and all these kind of things, like, I mean, it's just how it happens. But I went from 60 milligrams of lisdex amphetamines a day, um, in the summer. By the time winter came around, so 6 months later, I got down to zero.
Wow.
And yeah, it was so intense. And there was a really wild roller coaster in terms of what version of Darren are we going to see today, you know. And, at one stage, it felt like I was going through schizophrenia. Absolutely. Because these are chemicals, right? And so when you lower that dosage, it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going down 10%, right? Oh my God, you're going like from 40 down to 30. You're reducing by 25% of what your mind is used to, right?
Yeah.
And it gets to this kind of thing where it feels like the carpet is being pulled from underneath you, right? But it was this kind of thing where like my body was pushing it away. It wasn't like me kind of like choosing, oh yeah, like I want to drop down, right? But it was like I would feel that it was too powerful, like the medications were too powerful, so I would need to reduce, right? And as you're like, but your brain is just wired, and it's like it gets used to this stuff, and so we would have to go down. And I would just have to like keep moving around. At the time, I would go to farmers markets. There was so many like different like emotional peaks and valleys, and I just, sometimes it like, hey, I just stay in the house, right? When it got really drastic, just hide. Like I think my son was young, and it was like, oh God, you just didn't want to face anyone,
Mm-hmm.
just hide as best as you can, but I got through it, but there was like some, my doctor, who's absolutely unbelievable. She's so amazing. This is my like family doctor.
Yeah.
Like I had gone in there, and I was working in film and television before I got in the food industry, and I was like, I'm like, how could this have happened? How could I have gotten on all these meds? How did they do this to me? Why didn't I go down this other road? And this was that road that I was talking about before, with the ND versus, like the traditional, and um, and she was so great, and she was like, Darren, what you're doing is very important, you know. Like they're human beings, right? Like, and I'm not saying that this traditional medication that I like that route was wrong. This was all just kind of like part of the journey.
Yeah.
But it was just wild because of the way I was feeling. Like, if I'm threatening to bring a documentary crew, like I was like, this is what I'm saying. Like there was this imbalance, and it took a really long time to balance myself back out. But I even brought in some of the yacon root syrup, and I remember like sitting with her, showing this to her, and we're both like, what? Like we're like, this contains phos, like fructo oligosaccharides. Like we're like, what is this? Like, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, but I feel good. Like, and like I'd started my company. I was working. I started working with scientists. Bioenterprise was great. I gotten like a little bit of seed funding, but I would go to Guelph to meet them, and or I would be having these big meetings, and I would just be chugging crazy D's on the way, to help to stabilize myself. It was this really weird thing. And yeah, but like so that whole journey happened. I'd gotten completely off. Um, there was some nootropics that I started using then and whatever, right? Like just more like kind of like 5-HTP kind of stuff, and heavy like fish oil at night, which I drastically recommend. Omega-3s for everybody. But yeah, I had 3 doctors check my blood levels because I was like concerned. I was like, this was too wild, right? Like, am I okay now?
Right.
Because my eating was so clean and I was having so much crazy D's. But we checked my blood levels, and I had 3 doctors say that my cholesterol level ratio was the best that they had ever seen, ever, right? And it's not like I'm like, hey, I was 35, maybe a little older than that. And it's not like I was really concerned about cholesterol, you know. And we had seen my tests from before, like it's not like they were like that bad, but they weren't that good,
Right.
like they weren't like this, right? And so, but cholesterol, like, hey, we all know, right? It's like we want to ingest things with cholesterol, like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's when like it gets out of balance, right? It's this marker of inflammation of what's going on in your body, you know, is when it gets out of control, when those ratios are out of control, right? And we need soluble fibers, we need healthy diet, we need inflammation in control in order to have solid, cholesterol level ratios. Um, so it was pretty wild, but I like, and it's still like this was so ahead of the curve in terms of like prebiotics, and in terms of like this style of eating, right? This was well before the keto fad, which I mean, I which I do believe is a fad, but I think that it can be great for some people, and I will probably be dipping in and out of ketosis like the rest of my life, here and there, in and out, but I'm a true believer of the Mediterranean diet,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where it's at for people. But, eating the color of the rainbow, this is where it's at. Like, anything that's right for your microbiome, is what's right for you, you know. And I'm like, well, I'm not gonna come down and say that one diet is better than the other. I am saying, you know, what I said in the beginning, take epic dumps.
Right.
Like, I if that is right, you know, then I can't say that you're eating wrong, because that's working for you. Everybody is so unique. And this might just be disgusting, even just to talk about right now, but I'm doing it because of what I went through, and how I'm like, this should be the norm to speak about in public. But I do feel like, I mean, when we finally have a medical system right, a trip to the doctor will entail a stool sample.
Right.
It really will. We'll be sending this off to labs and getting like real diagnosis done in terms of like what's going on inside of you, you know, and that will help people's mental health. I promise you, you know.
Why
Um,
don't they do? Why don't they do that already?
yeah. Well, I think because like there's some really cool companies like startups in the US. I think one's called Viome. And I think you have to like get the technology really sound, you know,
Mm.
and it takes that kind of thing before it's really introduced, and also like just things take time, you know, but yeah, I mean, like that's my outlook as to why it hasn't been introduced yet. Like, I mean, I maybe it should be like, if we funded, if we put more research, that this could happen a lot faster, and I do feel that it should, it could help to curb a lot of different diseases. I mean, it was, I think it was Hippocrates, like so many, like, years ago, saying that, I mean, the root of disease was lying in the gut,
Mm-hmm.
almost all, like not every disease, right? But like almost all of them, is that's where it starts.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, this is like, I know it's where we have to go, how fast it's going to happen, I'm not sure, but when people have money, they can find a way, right?
Right.
The bootstrapping entrepreneur like me, no, it has to work a little bit differently, and for your average person, it's just like, what, you got to monitor that day to day, and I recommend to people like just to get to that peak state of health so you can see what it feels like, you know, and just track yourself, just track, see how you feel, Um, and you know what, if I mean, some people like, I mean, in a way, like with me and my vision and my mental health, um, I feel lucky that I am so sensitive, right? Like I can feel like the cleaner I eat, the more sensitive I become, right? And that's why I was like, me being a food entrepreneur makes the most sense because it means that I can help to change the direction for the future, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because I can go and I can be with scientists and I can say this doesn't feel right, versus this based on the science behind it, you know, is right. right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
wait a second, you know, um, our bodies are very intricate, right? And we're designed to be eating fruits and vegetables and whole foods, right? So it's just like, it's hilarious coming from a guy who makes a soda, which we think of as a highly processed drink, to be talking like this. But I'm like, yeah, this is one of the reasons why I felt like, doing this was my calling, because I could sit in there and I could see how I react to certain things.
Right.
So yeah.
Now with like the soda and all of this stuff, like you were talking about the Yukonin root. I think I said
Yeah.
that right. Yeah,
Yeah, Yacon root.
Yukon.
But people can just say Yacon root in North America,
Hmm.
or whatever they want to say. It's Yacon, from Peru. But yeah, sorry to cut you off there.
No, no, no. I
Um,
appreciate it,
yeah.
but like with the roots and everything, it and just eating healthy and the digestion. It you
Mhm.
mentioned it before. There was a quote from way back, and it just seemed like common knowledge prior to you know our most recent memory, like way back in ancient civilizations. Like they were like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, healthy, eat roots, vegetables, all this stuff.
Yeah.
When did that change, and why did we accept it so hard, like in today's society?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like, I think that two things were actually happening simultaneously, right? And one is not bang on to what you're talking about. One was the overuse of antibiotics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that they're wrong, but we started to take them too often, and that started killing our microbiome, right? And who knows, like what started happening, from generation to generation. Like you're taking too many antibiotics, right? You have a child. What happens to the microbiome, right? But So there's that thing that was happening, but it was this kind of sugar, salt, fat era, where in the where we started getting into processed foods, right? Like 60s, like the fast food era started. And then it just became this, like, TV dinner, this ease, right? We started to get lazier, more sitting, more sedentary life, which is very unnatural as well,
Mm-hmm.
and but people weren't feeling the effects, right? It was just like, why would you not? I'm like, I would eat, hey, I would eat Doritos every day. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
this stuff tastes good, right? And we didn't understand, like, the implications, right? It was like anything, like, like, I mean, you don't learn until you fail, right? In a lot of cases. And I just think that that's what was happening. I mean, like, I think there was a lot of, like, people, farm life, or just people, like, who kind of knew better, that a home cooked meal was better. An apple a day keeps a doctor away, right? But speaking of which, an apple today versus an apple from 100 years ago, if you took a look at the nutrient content in each, right, it's drastically different.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Right. Yeah.
um, we like, and it's tough, right? Like, I mean, we are spraying glyphosate on wheat crops, twice. This is Roundup, right? And I'm not saying that this shouldn't be done. Like, I mean, there's something where, we're about to, like, lift the legal levels in Canada even a little bit higher, because of flooding and different things where these farmers are trying to survive. Like, this is a source of income, and these things help them to make their crops more robust, kill off the weeds, do all this kind of stuff, right? Like, there's reasons why, um, but there's implications, right? Like, glyphosate has serious implications on our microbiome. You know, all I know is that I can't eat wheat, yeast, or barley. Like, there's just something that I doesn't work for me, right? Other people can. You know, and everybody has different limits on every single type of food, right? And that's what I mean, is, like, people have to discover that ultimate peak of health for themselves, right? To really understand how life should be for them, and
Mm-hmm.
then they can do whatever and see how they feel and whatever. I mean, but I just encourage everybody to find that. um so So yeah, back to what you were saying, your question, right? About what happened in these eras, when we started, like, with the fast food diet, processing foods in a very different way. We started going, oh my God, like fat is wrong, right? Watch out for fat, right? But there was a lot of just unnatural trans fats being put in other things, like the cooking oils and all this kind of stuff, right? Vegetable, like now we know better, right? Science tells us different. But people started doing, I guess it was more like kind of Atkins approach, like just getting rid of fat, entirely. People were having margarine instead of butter,
Right.
and it was really wreaking havoc,
Yeah.
on us. And it's pretty alarming. I think that things are finally, in a way, starting to change a little bit, um, but we still always want the simplest method, and this is what's the current thing that's, I was doing demos yesterday in front of a very affluent community, and this keto thing, right? Like where people, which for me was the gateway for that, was mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And doing it holistically. Um, but people are just like, no sugar, right? Kind of the way that we were with no fat, right? Like way back when. Um, and Crazy D is here to say this. um, that the issue is not sugar, right? The issue is refined sugars. Like our body needs some sugars, right? But you want sugars from, like, things like fruits, like where you're getting like natural sugars with fiber, and but like, but this is what I mean about, like, keto did some great things for people, because I think that what it did was it actually helped their gut bacteria, okay, by getting rid of these refined sugars, okay, and reducing some of these carbs, right, which may have been loaded with glyphosate and things like that. I think on a grand level of me viewing it all is that, like, it did have a decent impact on a lot of people, and just changing, right? They're like, oh God, like how is my body metabolizing all these different carbs and whatever, and I think that it did more good good than harm, but you've always got the cheap people, and you've always got the people doing like unnatural, like, cheat stuff, very highly processed keto foods, and I say, I always say this, it's just back to, like, okay, like if your digestion is good, right? I can't go and say to this person, right, you shouldn't eat that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they just might work a little bit different than me, you know.
Right.
Um, but um, but yeah, I just know that there's so many products that I have that I can feel it, and I'm like, this is not good for you. It might look like, if you look at the NFTs, right? Yeah, in nutritional facts table,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah, those look fine. No. Like,
Right.
there's processed foods, like, and we can process food in a healthy way, and but there's way more foods that are processed in an unhealthy way, so people got to watch out, and I say eat the rainbow, you know just look at those ingredients, and look at all this, but yeah.
I thought you, when you said NFT, I thought you were going to go into a huge tangent, and I was like, oh my god, where are we going? Like I thought you meant like the NF, like fungible token, all that weird stuff.
Yeah, no, this is my world of NFTs. Yeah.
I like your world a little better, honestly.
Yeah.
Uh, um, so when you first like started introducing the soda to like potential business partners, or just
Yeah.
like trying to sell it to clients and everything, it was, we're still, you said we're getting better, of course, but we're still in this era where it's like soda is like one way, it's full of sugar and it's delicious and it's fine. When you
Yeah.
started introducing this soda that's healthy for you and it
Hmm.
has roots in it, I have to imagine the reception was weird.
Yeah, no, it was, and I gotta say, like, I mean, the thing about it was that um I was so supercharged, at the start of the company, nothing was going to stop me. I was a man possessed, and because I just felt so amazing, I wanted people to feel just the way that I did, and I knew nothing about running a food company, but I myself would go and make an impact, right? And I would go to stores, and pitch them, and I would have stacks of science with me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, scientific articles on my ingredients, and they would be like, what, But I was so far ahead of the curve, right? And so at the time, there was a wave with the kombucha stream,
Right.
you know, and um, and so that would kind of like sell itself, and that took like some big massive companies in the US to really kickstart that revolution, and I could talk about kombucha like later. I want to get back to your point. But yeah, like, so, but what happened was, as soon as I wasn't in the store, as soon as I wasn't in front of people, when you would see my early bottles on the shelf with a big load of sediment like this in Metro,
Mm.
like, like, which wasn't coming from the root veggies. It was coming from these other, like, I was putting real nutmeg, cinnamon, turmeric, like the real spices in the soda, just pile up. But it was like, people were like, what? Like they were just really confused, and they, like, I mean, and the thing was, is like that hardcore soda drinker would be let down, which was rare, I mean, because I was going to health stores, in general, and there's been a real palate shift in terms of people, like, over the years and since I started, people aren't used to this overly sweet 44-gram Mountain Dew,
Mm-hmm.
Anymore, right? There's been like a palate adjustments, but it was rare. But I would get some people who would just be like, "What are you doing? You know, what is this?" But I would get it in front of that right crowd. But the issue was, and I know, right, is that it just took way too much education in terms of me trying to extend. I was one guy, and for me to put this across the country and really mass produce, it was going to take a huge mechanism and a lot of education, and it just wasn't possible, and I was learning so much in terms of like my label, how to market the product properly, also dealing with, like, because I had chosen these really strange ingredients, um, like other things like food industry related stuff, like in terms of like supply chain, and pricing. And, it got so bananas that I started growing crops all over Ontario, Windsor, Niagara, Uxbridge, pretty close to you.
Mm-hmm.
Also by the subway tracks in Toronto. I was hopping my friends' fences, and people would be like, he'd have tenants downstairs. They'd be like, "Oh, there goes Crazy T again. He just hopped the fence," and he's like, "I'm by the subway, and I've got all these cone plants, right?" And so it was one of these things where I read later after I started the company, like they say, don't take ingredients that nobody's heard of, right? Because um, the education behind it, right? And so it was very kind of hard, right? In that respect, it would have to be a very intelligent customer in order for this to fly. And most people are not, like, I mean, hey, I don't expect everybody to know what I know about health. Like, this is my area of choice, right? I mean, other people have different lives and they're very busy, so I was going to fly off the shelves of Big Carrot, but what about Metro? What about this, right? So um, for me, this has just been um, a waiting game, and also just in terms of me optimizing and getting this to the stage where I could mass produce, and being part of, like, I was so far ahead of the curve of what we call it in the health industry, right? Where it took people such a long time to learn about probiotics, right? And then the acceptance of, like, and for me it's like, wait a second, fiber is the ultimate, right? I grew up in an era where we would make fun of it, you know. Like, I remember watching Saturday Night Live and seeing a guy on a big pyramid of colon below cereal. And I mean, and and so it was like, wait a second, like, I mean, like, fiber, like, what do we care about that for? And you think that you're going to get it out of this bread, or you're going to get it out of this and that, but there's barely anything there.
Mm-hmm.
You got to eat vegetables, for crying out loud. You got to get it from these kind of sources. But so it's with me, it was more like, okay, the longer I hang in, if what I'm doing is right in terms of nutrition, like, that'll win in the end. And I was like, I just got to hang in here, you know and just wait for my curve. And so it's been interesting, and it's allowed me to kind of develop the product further. Like, so I don't want to dweeb out too much, but there is a now I have 3 different types of prebiotic fibers in each drink, right? So that means that they carry to different areas of your large intestine, which is where all your probiotics live, and
Mm-hmm.
feed a greater range. Um, Due to the different molecular weights of these, right? So, like, there'll be phos, inulin, pectin kind of thing, or acacia, right? But just mixing up, like, and having them come from as holistic ingredients that I possibly can. Like, it's baobab fruit pulp. 60% of it is pectin fiber. And it's just pulp from the actual fruit. Yacon root syrup is like, it's maple syrup on steroids, like,
Mm-hmm.
processed in a very clean way. I know a lot about, like, they're not all equal. I use a really great one in my drink, right? But I know how to know which one is good and which one's not. But anyhow, moving on. Like, so yeah, I mean, I like, that was there definitely was that, but I got to say that the grocery stores were receptive. But I think that your average customer wasn't quite ready yet.
Mm-hmm. And what's the reception like now?
Now, it is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's like, because, and the reason why is, it took a couple of big companies in the US to start after me.
Right.
Just yeah, to actually start this trend, and now, like, people are like, the Canadian grocery stores, or grocers, they go down to these and they're like, oh, like, this is where it's at, right? And so it's actually been like, some stores, like, have been bringing some of the American products, and I'll call them up and say, hello, like, and and they'll be like, what, you have this? And I'm like, yeah, I've been crushing this since 2016. Like, I'm like 3 blocks from you, or whatever. And but they'll put me in, and now, like, I like, I keep up packaging updates. It's all of these things, like the style and everything. It takes so many different mechanisms to make a beverage soar, but yeah, like, that's the way that it's gone. There was a huge brand called Olipop, and drink Olipop. That is a great drink. I have nothing bad to say about it. We're different, we're absolutely different, but they really got that movement, and they realized that they're great for diabetics, and that's why mine was crafted too, with a lot of that same rationale. And then there's been other drinks that have called themselves prebiotic soda, even though they're not really prebiotic.
Mm-hmm.
And they're sneaking their way into some stores, and for me, it's like, wait, like, where's the fiber? Like, like, it just doesn't make sense to call something like ACV, apple cider vinegar, prebiotic, you know, they can have like a very small amount, like traces of pectin, you know, but I'm sorry, it's not going to have a prebiotic impact. You know, like
Right.
like it can have other impacts, right? But so like, you know, this is the way the industry goes, and people, you know, different regulatory in different countries, um, you know, and people trying to cheat the rules a little bit here and there, but the category is starting to grow, and it's not going to go away. You know, I mean, this is taking care of your gut bacteria is everything,
Yeah.
all in all. You know, I always give this analogy, you know, and this is like, you know, kombucha. I think there could be a lot of great benefits for a lot of people. You know, or I shouldn't even talk about kombucha. I'll just talk about taking probiotics, right? Um, if you take a probiotic, right, a lot of the early ones just had like a billion. I think now they're up to like 20 billion, you know. And I say, like, think of it like, you know, of yourself as the probiotic going on vacation somewhere, okay? You might not make it to the actual destination, okay? Um, Trip cancellation, like whatever, like who knows what's going to go on. You might not make it. And that happens with probiotics, right? They got to make it a long way through the small intestine to get to the large intestine, right? Um, but you're on vacation, you don't stay there, right? So you kind of go, you might have some fun or whatever, and then, you know, you're gone, you're out of there, you know. So that's the way it works with probiotics. With prebiotics, um, they happens they're indigestible carbohydrates, so they don't spike the insulin levels, right? No glycemic response. This is fiber, and it carries right to where your 100 trillion probiotics are. And
Hmm.
so these probiotics, right? They weigh on average the same weight as your brain. Okay,
Wait,
and so
really?
they talk about like, yeah, yeah, 90% of your serotonin comes from your gut. Okay. And that's why they always talk about the gut brain axis.
Mm.
And so, yeah, 100 trillion. So if you're talking about putting something that has a billion probiotics into this pool of 100 trillion, okay, do you think that's going to have a great impact? Or do you think that like something that's going to help to fertilize and cultivate that 100 trillion, right? Like, you know, you kind of think about that, right? And my best analogy is this. I'm like, you know, think of like so your lawn, right? Like think of probiotics as being the grass blades, okay? And it's the summer, there's a drought, you know, or it's the right after the winter, so it's all kind of dead, right? You
Hmm.
know, but it's there. Like I'm like, okay, like your grass is there. Well, if you throw more, like, you know, do you like, you know, if it's a drought, like, do you throw seeds on it? No, because
No.
it's a drought. You know, you got to water and fertilize that, you know. And so, and what I mean by drought is like just like the neglect of your probiotics, which are so important, right? Neglect through junk food, neglect through, you know, overabundance of stress or medications or whatever it is, right? So, um, so prebiotic fiber, sorry, is that water fertilizer. You know,
Hmm.
it's going to feed the probiotic bacteria. Okay, it's going to make it stronger so that it's going to overcome the pathogenic bacteria, so your bad bacteria. Okay, and by doing that, by making your probiotic stronger, that's what helps the immune system. Okay, um, the other thing is that um, it starts to multiply themselves, right? If you water your grass on your lawn and you let it grow, seeds start to spread naturally, right? So it's the same thing with your probiotics. They start to multiply themselves, you know,
Hmm.
and then you know, this is crazy, you know, scientific, but I say to people like the holy grail of gut health is not prebiotics, it's not probiotics, right? It is postbiotics. um,
What are
and
those?
that, yeah, like that is the byproduct, right? Of the when you give your probiotics, like when you feed them prebiotic fiber, you create your own postbiotics.
Mm.
Yeah. And so it's this like you know, again, I think for some of the people watching, short chain fatty acids, butyrate, We hear about the impact of butyrate and helping ketosis and all these different things. But what these postbiotics do is they help with the metabolism of carbs and fats. They help with energy levels, right? So you are going to, by creating your own postbiotics, you are in turn going to get energy that you created yourself. So it's not like having caffeine, where you are controlled by it. This is something where, oh God, like I get 2 hours sleep last night, and then you drink Crazy D's, or you have like a bunch of prebiotic fiber and fibers, and all of a sudden you'll just feel like a little bit of a lift come off, and you'll be like, what just happened? Like I'm a little like, like it's not really noticeable because it came from within,
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty neat, but that's how that works. And again, when you were talking about like the acceptance of my drink, it was like it took people so long to wrap their head around probiotics, and then prebiotics came in, and then now I'm talking about postbiotics
Yeah.
for your average customer, right? This is too much. They have their own lives, they got kids, so it's up to me to like just simplify, you know it's up to us to just find a way, to get the message out there.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, man.
Mhm.
Well, Darren, I think my last question for you, man. You've gone through your own personal journey with mental health and discovering the gut brain relationship, and then
Yeah.
with the soda, introducing it to the market, entrepreneurship, all of this. You've gone through all of this. How do you feel now? Like knowing what figuring out which diets work best for you, working out, whatever works best for you. Like how are you currently today?
Yeah. So what I would say is this, like, I mean, like I am a father of two kids, family, busy entrepreneur, you know, um, meetings, family gatherings, whatever, and so like, I mean, I need to, practice what I preach, it is with me watching the things that I talk about, I mean, especially through the pandemic, I mean, it was like, okay, I learned this before, and then I got to relearn and I got to relearn,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just kind of like, oh God, like I'm like, thank God I found that kind of physical peak, because you can go off the rails. Like, I mean, like this lifestyle that I talk about is not easy for a lot of people, and you got to make that time. Like, I'm just fortunate enough now, like where it's like, okay, like my daughter is just old enough that my son can watch her and I can fly out to the pool, for to do some lane swim in the morning, get back and have time to make myself that smoothie that I need to do and squeeze in, like what needs to be done, Um, so so yeah, no, I mean like but it is like in terms of mental health, like I like, there is this balance thing where it's I have stress, I have lots of staff, I got like way too many things going on as an entrepreneur, trying to grow. This is a very exciting time. But I'm like, oh God, like one little thing, one bag of chips on Saturday night, where okay, I could tell all the ones like, which are better than the others,
Mm-hmm.
right? I could tell all that, but this will impact me for the next 24 hours, right? And all these kind of things, right? It's like, I'm just a regular guy, but I can just sense it more. So I think it kind of reinforces, my thought process, of just, it's not perfect. It's just a daily struggle, that I deal with, and that's what enables me to, yeah, to help other people. I think,
Right. I love it,
yeah,
man. Now
yeah,
for the average listener, obviously you mentioned it, like all these words, pro,
mhm,
pre,
yeah,
post, all,
yeah,
all the types of roots, all the types of whatever it is.
yeah,
There's so many words and terms and everything that trying to
yeah.
trying to
It's
get peak performance
yeah,
is almost exhausting.
yeah.
Where should they start with their research if they're trying to get better?
Like in terms of mental health, right? Depending on like if people are on medications, like there can be some, like I always say, talk to an ND for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Most highly qualified. the more higher qualified, the better, right? But omega-3s are powerful, right? Fish oil, but there's if people are vegan or whatever's going on, hemp seeds have omega-3s. Chia, flax, they carry omega-3s too, but a fiber is extremely important. We're not even getting half of our daily recommended amount right now on average, right? But the levels of diabetes and the levels of like our obesity, everything boom, 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 and the fiber goes boom, 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 right?
Right.
That's a big thing. Eat the rainbow. I always say the better the color of the fruits and vegetables that people are taking in, on a daily basis, the more robust their microbiome is, right? And that's based on scientific fact. And and I would just kind of say, like, I mean, if people are having issues like this, there's key triggers, gluten, right? Dairy for a lot of people, right? And you got to take it away, in order to kind of see. And I would avoid like if dairy has color in it, it's not supposed to be there.
Right.
Simple, right? Like just try to think the simpler the logic that people have, right? It's all about simplicity. We used to eat simple, right? And like just look at those, like at the ingredients, but it's refined sugar, wheat, dairy were the three kind of big triggers for a lot of people, so they just got to watch it. They got to like try to like figure themselves out and what's going to work best. And as I said, take epic dumps.
Take epic dumps, man. That's my favorite point.
Yeah, like when things are like a daily basis. I mean, like not everybody is going to be like that, but when I'm at the peak of my health, that is how it is. That is how it is, and you're going to be like almost at the same time of the day, almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's and you are going to be feeling good mentally. I trust you. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that to you, but I'm just saying that in general, like, I mean, and when I'm at the peak of my mental health, it's like, wait a second, like this is working,
Right.
yeah, like, so that's what I have to say. Yeah.
I love
Think
it, man.
about that gut bacteria. Yeah.
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 I love it.
Um,
Where can everyone who's listening find you, find the drinks, find everything?
Oh yeah, Crazy D Labs, CrazyDLabs.com. We've got online store. We're also in like Natura Market, well.ca, like for online customers. Rise Market is a great place. People can get a subscription, and they get like wholesale health foods, from local Canadian entrepreneurs, which is amazing. Rise Market. And we're going to be expanding into Loblaws this summer in Ontario. But we're Metro. We're a variety of Sobeys. If you got a Sobeys or Foodland by you, you can ask the local grocery manager to bring us in, and they likely will. I've also got my soda elixir concentrates, which are for people who have SodaStream.
Mm-hmm.
And they're online right now, but it's for people if they have kids, because these are great for kids, people with diabetes, like anyone. These are great. But like, you get one of these elixirs, and if you have kids, like instead of this making 12 drinks, you're going to get 36.
Right.
Because you don't want to open up a whole can for kids.
Right.
Right. They just run around and like, like you want to drink the whole thing. So it's great value, tax free. But yeah, that's where you'll find us now. Yeah, and the website, like we're always, we've got a national Canadian reach right now. So the store list is always growing. Yeah.
I love it, man. I'll put those links down
Yeah.
below. Darren, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, unbelievable. I really appreciate the time. And so happy that you love Crazy D's.
Of
and you were a contest winner.
I know. I love it. I'm not just saying it. I really do love these drinks. I've never been a soda guy. And so I was kind of hesitant to drink it, but
right.
I mean, you're killing it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, and they're just getting better and better. I'm going to send you some of the new stuff.
Oh, I cannot wait. And to all my listeners, take epic dumps. and I will see you guys next time.
Later, guys. Bye.